This is the Sourceseeker Hour. This is Baruti Carl Alexander. You all know me. Thank you very much. This is our 137th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. And we are talking about Black America. And since we're in Houston, Black Houston. We're going to talk about the pulse, the soul, what's happening, the feeling, what's going on, and how we feel about the direction that we are taking as Black people. So many things have happened. So many things are happening out there. There are brothers and sisters out there making millions of dollars. What are they doing with them for the community? Is it their responsibility? We're going to talk about that also. So I want to first introduce my guest. Pam, if you would like to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Pamela Hicks. I am a teacher at HISD. I'm a teacher in one of the NES schools, Cook Elementary, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's across the street from Kashmere High School. I'm a retired police sergeant. I was with HPD for 21 years, but my call is teaching, and I love teaching in every capacity.
Thank you very much. Brother Sedrick.
This is Brother Sid. I host Conscious Mindset. We've been on the air 9 years, going on 10 years very, very soon. And we strove to give information to the community, provide news you can use, flavor you can save, and hopefully you'll tell a neighbor. I'm an educator as well. And definitely, we really need to focus in on voting. We got to vote out Harold Dutton. We have to vote out Harold Dutton. Let me repeat again. We have to vote out Harold Dutton. If you don't know, he's the author of House Bill, which led to HISD being taken over. I think it's 142. Please don't quote me on that. But he was HISD being taken over. And I actually read the reason why that this bill was put in place is because he wanted to plan a Wheatley purple and white gala, and he noticed that the Miss Wheatleys from the 60s and to 80s, they were not as accomplished in his opinion. And courtesy of that led him to look at the scores of not only Wheatley, Kashmere, and others, but to devise a plan which has now led to the largest school district in Texas, as well as the 7th largest in this country, which has the largest population of Black and brown students almost in the country, to now be taken over by the state. And those duly elected representatives were taken over almost fascistly like, and now those students, some 190,000, almost like lab rats, guinea pigs, some stuff that didn't work in Dallas, and I'm questioning whether it worked in Odessa and anywhere else has been.
Right.
Well, thank you, Brother Sedrick. We have two educators, so I want to go into this. I know I hadn't got you pre-noticed on this question, this comment, but Florida has taken the lead to say, okay, these Black issues we don't necessarily want to be talked about in our curriculum in the school. And now other school districts, other state education institutions are starting to look at that. And Florida, and from what I understand, it was Black people who were the ones that actually went in and did the mechanics to say, okay, we're going to change this so it's more palatable for the white community or the larger community. But you can't do that and really tell the truth. You have to really, if you're going to tell the truth, it's going to be a little painful. Brother Sedrick, what's your comment on that?
Well, and not to go into specifics, but just to give you a generalization, which I think will encompass what we see nationally happening in Florida and happening here locally in Texas, is we see a staunch approach by conservatives. Some would say white supremacists, but I won't venture into that. But I will say those who are representing a more whitewashed, more bland representation. I wanted to take the onus of ownership of education. We know education is.
Excuse me, Brother Sedrick, can you double check your audio for a second?
Yeah.
It's not coming through very well.
Not at all.
If you could double check your, because I want to come back to that. Pam, can you discuss that?
Yeah, I was really kind of raising my hand like I do in school because I upped my volume. I was struggling to understand. The conversation seemed great, but I just still couldn't understand. As far as the question, and you know what? I think change is necessary. So I'm both on this, and I'm not a great person. I think change is necessary. It's certain, not, you don't throw I have a terminology in you don't throw the baby out with the bath water. It's just the bath water's bad. Even with, and I'll give you an example. He was talking about housing, which is wrong, putting a disciplinary in the library. But I've seen twice in my life where the library was very effective. One, in my last school, Ed White. One, another time when I taught at A-Leaf ISD. The librarian basically sit down, read books, had a particular genre in that genre, and then she even invited the author of that particular, let's say the author was Captain Underpants or Wimpy Kids, but she basically encouraged this particular genre and multiple genres, but they actually entertained and was a true librarian. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say the school, Highland Heights. I mean, it was a joke. I mean, the whole school, it was not used effectively. And at my current school, wasn't done effectively. I shouldn't say that, but because I already told you what school, but last year they did roadblocks. I mean, what do you call those, putting those little blocks together or videos. It just wasn't used effectively. So when you've seen a librarian and Ed White used effectively, you want that. And especially for our Black children, why are we in a Black neighborhood? That Ed White was a predominantly Hispanic. Why in a Black neighborhood it's not used effectively? Those children have a right to check out books. They have a right to, so I was a little frustrated. So I'm in that way, like, change is needed. I don't know, he's the change that we need.
Can you hear me, brother?
I can hear you very well now. I want to make this comment, and I'm going to come back to you and give you an opportunity. You're talking about, Pam, that the new push to make a resource or a behavioral center in the libraries and getting rid of that. What that comes from is you cannot have learning if you do not have discipline. I say it again. Absolutely. You cannot have learning if you can't have discipline. What is happening is the schools are being overrun in a society environment where education is not respected, and it leads to greater behavioral issues that are becoming very serious. And so these principals, these administrators are saying, okay, we got to have a way to gather this discipline, because, I mean, we might have one or two or three that may want to read, and you can set them off in a school or, in a classroom environment, give them some books. But if you got 20 that are acting a fool, the 20 can disrupt the whole school environment. So you got to get a handle on that before you can move forward. Brother Sedrick.
Okay, I just wanted to respond to your first question about Florida and Ron DeSantis, because he made a point that I think bemoans what we're all experiencing across the country. And he says, there's a war on truth. I think we have no choice but to wage a war on woke. And they talk about Florida, the place where woke goes to die. Now, why do I bring that up? Because I think it's apropos and important. When we talk about being woke, we're talking about being aware. We're talking about being conscientious. We're talking about understanding the reality as it is, as it was, and as it will be. And that's one of the things that I think we have to really understand is that if we don't get a grasp of education, then we'll never understand fully what was the past. And we won't understand the present, because it's very difficult to understand the present if you don't understand what happened to create it. And then you won't have the wherewithal and the welfare, if you will, to be able to move forward constructively and productively in the future. So when we see education being attacked, education is the most political and the most important socialization tool in the society. So when we see that attacked, we're not unaware of why that's being attacked, because we see the progression of our society. And the way to make a society more docile, more subservient, and more trained is to
two volumes going. One, you need to shut one down so you can be heard by one. Okay. So there's two things going. And let me comment on that. Yes, we all know really deeply what's going on. These parents do not want the truth to really be told, because they don't want Johnny or Sally to feel uncomfortable in the classroom. But the truth is uncomfortable. The truth is uncomfortable. So you have to find a way to, I guess, make them comfortable in the uncomfortable if you're really gonna deal with truth. But to not deal with truth is you're not dealing with history, reality, or anything like that, and which is what they want to do. And it is, yes, the most important fight, political fight, educational fight that is going on. And I'm not sure everybody in our community really understands what's really happening. It is so important in that context. And I think we are slightly behind, and they are gaining momentum. And it started with critical race theory, the 1612 project, or whatever that is.
1619.
1619, excuse me. And it's a battle that's on their side is really gaining steam, and it's a real political issue for them. And we got to get in there and use all of our skill to enhance our position. Pam.
You know, I'm gonna go with DeSantis. He does a lot of rhetoric, just like Donald Trump. And we can, you know, all that wokeness. I'm not offended by what he says. That's part of the rhetoric and a part of his campaign that he's going on. It is a political campaign. I mean, Trump was excellent at, that whole thing, like you said, using the woke and the woke people, and we kind of run to those words. I mean, even when it's being used wrong by certain white women. But the sad part about it is that I'm not going to go into that rhetoric. He's going to do what he wants to do. And you saw what he did with Disney. I mean, Disney is suing him right at this point. And they packed up. So they pretty much, he's in trouble with all his rhetoric towards Disney. But my main thing about education is important. We're in that system. So we have to be mindful of where we are. Like when my mom used to always say, when you go to somebody's house, you know how to act. Remember, my mother used to always says, watch the company you keep and be mindful of, what to say, who to say, and what to say. but we're in that system. I'm not saying bail out the system. It's a lot of moving parts here. And I don't know it can be corrected by one thing. It's a multitude of things.
It is a multitude of things. I'm gonna say this really quickly because I think it's important. This is all correlated and connected to the conversation about the state of Black America. Because when you don't get the proper understanding of context and history, you'll talk about Black Wall Street, you'll talk about Tulsa, you'll talk about all of these different things and not realize what destroyed Black Wall Street was not the sick racists that burned down and bombed the town twice. What destroyed Tulsa, what destroyed Black Wall Street and destroyed Miami, destroyed most of Houston, and destroyed so many other African-American communities specifically was the federal government and the highway system and the redlining and the redistricting. This is not my opinion. This is fact. You can read Robert Rubenstein. He wrote an entire book about this, and others have done this documented research, and it shows how federal highways came through and decimated Black communities, which were thriving economic centers of opportunity for many Black communities. I just want a clarification, Brother Sedrick.
When you say they destroyed, you're talking about where they Black people own property, and then they said eminent domain, and we want to take that property. That's one way you're talking about.
Yeah, that's one way, but also due to policy, even those who still were able to keep their properties were not able to afford the taxes that were correlated to the rise in those environments becoming more profitable. Okay, so when we look at gentrification, many times we just look at it as vultures coming in and buying up property and not realizing how public policy affects that and how the federal government in many instances either insinuates that or perpetuates that process occurring. Many of us don't know that because we have not been properly educated. And that's why I go back to the education piece being vital and critical, because many environments, just like they did in Illinois, would be opportunistic to take advantage of reparations and restitution for those things, but they don't have that knowledge and information.
Well, let me say one thing, Carl. Most of those people didn't own that property. That's one of the big things, is that especially inner cities, they didn't own it, they were renting. And
in Tulsa, they did.
Okay, well, now you're talking about 1920, because Tulsa is a totally different thing. I'm talking about the highways that come through here. That property wasn't owned. I mean, and you have city council members, most of the time when you have gentrification or redlining or anything like this, it's known 10 years in advance. You had a lot of Black council people here that could have told us, hey, buy property in Third Ward. They're getting ready to come through and do something. They did nothing. They said nothing. They because they were filling their pockets too. So like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that, that's just not there. Most of those, they didn't own it. They just didn't own it. You look at it and it's kind of sad, but Carl has a question there about economic development, which I think now is changing. We are buying property. We are buying bonds and investments and all that. So things have changed, but a lot of that property, it didn't, in Third Ward, didn't belong to them. It was renters.
All right, I want to, let me get deeper into that. I want to bring in Brother Warren. Brother Warren, we started talking about the Ron DeSantis curriculum in Florida and how that impacts the Black community and how we should approach that. And I wanted you to introduce yourself as well as comment on that as Sedrick and Pam have commented.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Warren Houston, of course, the creator and organizer of the People's Law Study Group, Know Thyself Family, Know Thyself Radio Network. First of all, let me say this, Mr. Alexander. First of all, I haven't really kept up with the Ron DeSantis issue, so it would be hard for me to answer that question as it relates to what you all are talking about, because I haven't really kept up with it at the moment. But I have looked over the questions concerning the topic and was definitely ready to answer those questions.
Okay.
Now, if y'all want to expound on it, what DeSantis is doing, and then you want to hear my opinion on it, then I will give it that way.
Okay. Well, first of all, the issue is that the curriculum, if we've heard about the issue, he's saying that, and it was Black people supposedly on the committee who came up with this, who said that one of the things of slavery is you could look at it that it benefited slaves in a lot of ways because they earned skills. And, you know, that was one of the things that was pointed out. And of course, that's one of the things that, of course, we are upset with that characterization. And that has gotten him in deep hot water and dropped him in the in the political polls for president. So that was one of the issues. And as Pam mentioned, he's in hot water with the Disney Corporation. And I wanted to mention that it seems like at this time, he's trying to diffuse it and back out because Disney's a big, I mean, they're a little bit above his pay grade. You know, even though he's governor, Disney's a little bit above his pay grade. So he's trying to back out. He thought he was going to intimidate them, but they say they're not going nowhere. And I don't believe they're going to let him out of it. They're going to take it to the hill. Did you want to comment after I commented, Brother Warren?
Well, again, I don't have all the full details, and I'm still not clear on. You said he said something about something that benefited the slaves. What did he say that was supposed to be benefiting the slaves that correlates to what he's doing right now? What?
Anybody else want to comment on that?
I just want to go back to the fact that, you know, again, we don't just see this in Florida. We can talk right here in Texas, you know, with Greg Abbott, you know, removing the diversity and the inclusion offices and branches that are at many of our public institutions. When we talk about that, when we deal with that, when we look at, you know, how there's been an attack upon diversity, upon, you know, expansion and progressive ideas, whether we like it or not, there's a subset of society that says we need to go back to the way things were, make America great again, you know, whatever the case may be. And while we might not feel it was great then, they hold political power in many of these seats that we need to become aware of. And my point in bringing all of this up is we need to go vote. I don't care how people feel about it, whether it's a waste of time or not. It's not a waste of time. We can look right here in the city of Houston and we can see how disenfranchised Harris County voters will be, how Christian McAfee, the attorney for the city and the county, I should say, he's actually having to fight and go to the Texas Supreme Court to see if voters in this municipality can have their voices heard. We see how many of the instances of HISD being taken over by the state, which has been in play and in place since 2019. We see these things manifesting courtesy of who we elect, who we vote for. And even in Florida, those that have been voted for, those that have been put in play and in place in those houses, many people can't name them, even if they live in Florida. But the effects and the consequences of the legislation and the policy is real. So what I'm trying to say right now is we need to become very invested in what's transpiring locally. And I'll say this to respond to a good sister. From 2010 to 2020, according to the information that's been compiled, Third Ward lost over 8,000 residents, okay? And even though the population grew 35% in the city, many of those people actually own their homes, okay? The problem was, as I was saying, the property values rose so much, they could not afford the taxes. I was one of those individuals, okay? So I'm speaking from personal experience. And my property, when I got it, was $175,000, and then it rose to $400,000. Now, had I been smart, I could refinance and all those things, but my credit was going through some issues. But the point being is I didn't have the money for the taxes, so I let it go. And many people experienced that. And why was that a part and parcel? Because of public policy. Many of the TERSs that were in place in other areas didn't exist any longer in Third Ward to protect us. And I'll say this, with 45 expanding, the $7 billion project is happening as we speak, you're gonna see more people lose properties.
Pam.
You know, on 45, for example, that's good. All those row houses, I mean, U of H took most of it anyway. So they went, you know, I don't know if you're originally from Houston.
No, I'm not.
And U of H have kind of just drove right through, and the city, I guess, gave them all that part. And it started from, they didn't extend way to 45. So, and it started probably maybe in the 90s, the 1990s. And so basically those row houses, they're gone. And like I said, they were row houses. That's gone. So most, and I didn't see them the last time I was there. Yeah, it's got some bad areas, but it's pretty much taken up by U of H. So in the city, they can say they bought the property. But that was, I know a couple of people that have their homes in Third Ward, and they still have their homes. So I'm aware of a couple of property owners that's there. And so that's all I had to say about that.
Yes, ma'am. There are so many things happening. One of the questions I asked in the beginning was, with the people in entertainment, Black people in entertainment, athletics, with all of this money coming in, is that better? Is our community seeing benefit from that? And is it their responsibility as Black people? Of course, they're individuals, and we can't decide as a collective that they should do this or they should do that. But would it be a good thing? And what do we think about that? Brother Warren, what do you think about that?
I've experienced that, as they say, a house divided against itself cannot stand. One thing that I've realized in education separates you. Once you become educated, your thinking change, everything about you change. And sometimes when you go back into the same communities that you come from, because your thinking has changed, then you sometimes become an outcast. I think I've told this story on many occasions that I've spoken with my mentor, who's been an attorney in this city for over 30-something years, who originally moved here from Montgomery, Alabama. When I got my law degree, when I first started, he told me, he said, by the time you finish that degree, be careful how you treat your family and friends. When he first said that, I had no idea, no clue what he was talking about. But by the time I finished, I understood very well, because I was snapping people up because I was just surprised at the thinking and how people would not even think before they speak and just completely ran by emotions. So the reason why he had told me is because he wanted me to realize you was once them. You were like that, so don't mistreat them, because now you're open up to thinking that you look down on your own people. So I understood that. But this is the problem. I mean, even if you become educated a lot of times and you want to try to change the narrative, those that are in that circle that you left are not ready for that change. They're not acceptance of that change. So if they're not acceptance of that change, then you have to go on another route, another direction. Because we're still talking about things here. We're still talking about slavery and stuff like that in 2023. And the world is steady moving on. The only thing constant in the universe is change. And it seems like our people in the community don't want anything to change. None of us has never been in slavery. None of us has never felt the master's whip. Matter of fact, the white folks that's walking, none of them have never been slave owners. So we don't want to change our narrative and change our thinking, then we stay stuck where we are.
You're from Montgomery, Alabama, Brother Warren?
No. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and raised in Fifth Ward in Houston. No, I'm saying my mentor came here from Montgomery, Alabama. He's been a successful attorney in this city for the last 30 years.
Okay. Well, one of the questions, and by the way, I'm gonna be traveling to Atlanta, Montgomery, and Tuskegee pretty soon. I do a lot of traveling. what does the Montgomery boat brawl that we saw that happened, what do we say that says about Black America? What is your opinion of that, Brother Warren?
Well, I think the brothers were definitely in their right to do what they did. It was definitely a stress reliever. It was funny. I enjoyed all that. But what I don't like about it at the end part is now become commercialized. It's a marketing tool. Everybody's walking around with folding chairs around their neck. And it's, oh, we got them. Instead of looking at it from a different conclusion as where it's just a comical thing or a thing about joking, how does this work if we do this, not only just when it comes to a brawl, how about if we do this in the community as it relates to education, as it relates to building the community? Because I'm the same person that you've always talked to that never changes with me. If we don't have responsibility and accountability, we can keep pointing the fingers all day long and saying, this is wrong, that's wrong. Life is going to have adversity. I don't care what it is. If you are looking for equality, you are looking for something that does not exist. History is there. History is not there for us to get upset and get mad at it. It's for us to look at it. You can't change it. I can't change it, but it's for us to look at it and learn from it. So if we're not learning from it and we're still repeating the same mistakes, because in my opinion, what I see in 2023, Black people are worse off than they were in 1923.
That's true.
And that's sad because nobody's holding us.
Not
These
true.
people had,
Not true.
you look at people like
Not true.
Thurgood Marshall, you look at people like Booker T. If you look at all these Black people that had real obstacles and they overcame these obstacles, and we're sitting here free to do whatever we want. All we do is sit up and complain. I have a problem with that.
I hear you on that. I just want to say, when I see the Montgomery boat incident, I was very proud, but I also know in the back of my mind, that is why the rate of AR-15s has always risen, because white folks look at that and say, okay, that's why we want to have, and we'll never give up this AR-15, because we want to have an opportunity to be able to shoot all of them who are messing with us if we want to. Pam, you had a comment.
You know what? I think they're saying enough is enough. I mean, they're fed up. That's just how it works. I mean, you're finally fighting back. You get tired of this, you know, and ain't enough is enough. I was excited, laughing. I was cheering on. I was like that. Yes, yes. Because I'm like this person here. You know, I'm retired. HPD, I don't get ready. I stay ready. Now, I don't look for trouble. I will never look for trouble. And I'm the type of person, I hope I never leave this earth harming an individual. But if you come for me, see, you know, I'm ready. But I don't want to hurt anyone. But the idea, I will not have a camera. If I have a camera, it's going to be after I've taken care of business. But my whole thing about, like I said, if like a traffic incident, I'm going to move to the side of the road, back up, go around. I'm going to move, do whatever I can to make sure, hey, go ahead. If you're in a hurry, go. But that's my handle. I don't get ready. I stay ready. I'm always ready. And that's the same thing I think I've talked to a lot of my good friends. I say girlfriends because I'm old school, that I talked to them about caring. And I'm talking about, I said, it's necessary. It's not about if they have some kind of mental issues, I don't talk to them about it. But I talk to them about protecting themselves and being ready. It's not about having a gun. It's just being ready in case shit happens.
And it will happen. I'll say this, and then no one's talking about this. I think this is important. Montgomery, by many reports, is considered the second most prominent place for Black-owned businesses. 28.5% of Black businesses exist in the city of Montgomery, okay? They have a Black mayor by the name of Stephen Reed, and they have a Black police chief by the name of Daryl Albert, okay? And I think that has an important part to play in how those Black citizens operate. They didn't operate, and it's a nice place. They didn't operate from the standpoint of subservient, because those whites were not from Montgomery. Let me make that clear. Many people say that they were from Selma or other areas in Alabama, but they had been not following the request of not only the co-captain, Mr. Pluckett, but also the captain. They had been telling him for 45 minutes to follow instructions. And I think that that speaks to the white privilege that many folk don't want to acknowledge, but still exists in our society. And they got a rude awakening by many melanated people who were not going to go for that old, shuck and jive stuff. You know, they were willing to stand their ground. And I think this is important to say is we don't have to use physical violence, but we do need to stand our ground in many of these fights that must take place. In economics, it's still a fight. We might not be using our fists, but it's still a fight because inflation has taken over to the point to where average Americans are paying $709 more a month than we were just a year or two ago. And I'll say this, and I think this is important. Black America is being beset and affected by that the most, because we all know this in America. If America has a cold, Black folk have pneumonia. And we still haven't recovered from COVID. And I think it's important for us to realize and understand that we need to come together. Yes, we need to hold our elected officials accountable. We need to hold our entertainers accountable. We need to hold everybody accountable. But I think that we first and foremost need to have an agenda that's effective and constructive for the masses of our people.
One thing, with BRICS coming together, and I don't know what you know what's going on in Africa, we're getting ready to have pneumonia because it's getting ready to go down. With BRICS and all that coming together, what Niger has stopped France from coming in there. So
it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on.
We're gonna learn more about that. One question I wanted to ask though, and I want to come back to Brother Warren. You said that we are worse today in 2023 than we were in 1923. Are we more fragmented? Are we more divided? We have more money, but of course, money doesn't make happiness. How are we worse? And can you give more of a picture explanation of what you mean by that?
Well, you go back to the times slavery was first over. You had Blacks seem to be more unified. They were more serious about education. They were more serious about their community. That's not happening today. All this is a joke now. And I think we're more often to our emotions and feelings rather than the logical thinking of getting ahead and proving things, whether we've had obstacles or not. The thing is, I don't care who you are, there's going to be some type of obstacles in life. If it wasn't racism, so we say, it would be something else. So to constantly operate out of emotions rather than moving regardless of what has happened, how to happen, and keep moving, we went backwards. We haven't went forward. The educational rate is sad. And I heard Brother Sedrick talking about, and of course, I'm pretty sure we have different opinions about the state taking over HISD. From the looks of it, looked like they needed to take over HISD. It wasn't looking good at all. So something has to be done about it.
Okay.
Well, what about it's other districts that's doing very poorly? But let me just kind of run it down to you. A-Leaf is a very poor, Pasadena has done terrible. And I forgot the other white in small town districts. But here's the deal. Let me tell you, it's political again because my husband, who's a police officer, would first of all, it's a blue county. Let's make sure that you understand that it's a blue county. What
does that mean?
Blue county means a Democratic county.
Okay.
Second, my husband's, we're the second largest district with 160 elementary schools, 274 schools. Now you get a school like, let's say A-Leaf. A-Leaf had like 35 elementary schools and they're performing very poorly. A lot of the schools are performing very poorly. Same with Pasadena, a lot of the schools. I didn't say all of them, it's never all, but a lot of them. But they wouldn't take on over. But HISD is just the biggest purse. Give you an example. When my husband was to pick up money, so taxes for monthly for the A-Leaf ISD as a police officer, they had 1.4 million. He says, hey, is this this is year, like quarterly or yearly? He says, no, that's monthly ISD taxes for A-Leaf. So now, if A-Leaf have 5 high schools, I believe 4 or 5, and they're picking up $1.4 million a month for, I don't know if this is, I know school district taxes, but I don't know if it's home or was it business, so I'm not sure. Now, if they picking up $1.4 million a month, how much is HISD pulling in? And they got 274 schools. And and I think total, A-Leaf had 35. Well, so what I'm saying, it becomes economics, it becomes very politics, and then and also it's Harris County, and you're dealing with a strong blue county.
Brother Sedrick.
Well, I again, we got to vote out Harold Dutton because nowhere, he even said he never imagined that this law would ever take into effect, that this should never have actually happened. But it happened because, and we know that the schools that were in question, Wheatley and Kashmere, had risen their scores. They rose their scores. But because of politics, when we look at 2019, this has been going on since 2019. They've been trying to take over HISD, and I'm talking about TEA. And who it runs TEA? Mike Morath. Who put Mike Morath in place? Greg Abbott. And what we know, and we understand this clearly, is there's an agenda to dismantle and destroy public education. Why? Because charter schools are the wave. All right. We know the funding. We know the contributions that are made to campaigns courtesy of charter schools and this privatized education that even I know you probably voted for Greg Abbott, vouchers and all this other madness that they're trying to implement for $10,000 to $12,000, which won't cover half a semester at St. Thomas. Okay. And you know why I know that? Because they're charging $41,000 a semester. So why am I saying all these things right now? I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. What I'm saying is I'm aware and I'm supporting Black people and Black agendas, and also those who are economically challenged. And when we look at, even in HISD, the schools that are being most affected are not lily white, and they're not economically advantaged. No, they're economically disadvantaged, and they're Black and brown. And why am I bringing that up? Why am I making that distinction? Because those individuals have less political power, and they're not able to flex their might to be able to negate many of the constraints that are being put in play and in place by this society, trying to create greater haves and greater have-nots. And I respond to something that Warren said. Folks say, I'm not a slave master, you're not a slave. But those rewards and those bequeathments and those inheritance still exist. If we were given reparations, some say it would be $14.5 trillion, Warren. And I'm not talking about from the 246 years of servitude. I'm talking about just from the 40 acres and a mule that was supposed to be given courtesy of Sherman. So I will rest my case right there. We need to get reparations to be able to repair the wrong that was done.
Well, I want to talk about the politics. We come back to the politics, and I don't care what we're involved in. It goes to politics. What is politics? That is people saying, okay, I like this, I want this, and then working toward trying to make it happen. That's what politics is. And we have an election coming up. Matter of fact, let me give a disclaimer. I'm going to be an election judge. I have been the last 3 elections. But when I look at the mayor's race, as far as I know, you got Shelia Jackson Lee, you got Gilbert Garcia, you got Gallegos. Those are the quote unquote top 3. What
no. John
Whitmire. With the politics of Houston. Go ahead.
John Whitmire.
Who?
John Whitmire. John Whitmire is in. Yeah.
What do we think is going to happen with the politics of Houston, as well as Lena Hidalgo has taken a break. I don't know how that's going to be affected. What is going on with the politics of Houston? What's your comment on that, Brother Warren?
If I had my way, I'd clean that whole system out. Tell you the truth. I would just clean that whole system out and start over.
And what does that mean? Just everybody else, everybody who's in there now, just say y'all can't run no more and let's have some whole new candidates?
Yes, clean that whole system out. Clean out the whole pool, drain the whole pool. Politics is going to be involved in whatever you get into. If you're in some kind of church organization, there's some politics going on in there. There's somebody always doing something underhanded or crooked or whatever you want to say to win or whatever. That's life. But from a historical standpoint of view, in my opinion, Houston, the majority of Houston as it relates to the inner city is Black and brown. Now, my question is, we talk about these politics and the things that goes on in that city. Have Blacks and brown voted in their best interests? Do they truly understand the politics that they're voting for? That's the question that I have to ask, because in my opinion, I don't believe so. And then when we see these things take place and we see things, we wonder why these things are happening. We're telling people to vote, but it's one thing to vote, but it's another thing to understand who you're voting for and what you're voting for and why you're voting for, and not voting based off some kind of emotional pull. And I think that's what we've been tricked into. We vote from emotions, from what somebody said.
I want to come back to something you said, Brother Sedrick. You said that the government was the cause of a lot of the things, the problems that happen to Black people. But I must point out this also. In a lot of instances, the government has been the thing that has helped Black people also. Even if you go to back to slavery and the abolitionist movement and that push and different things, I would say, having gone to different countries and seeing different situations, because of our Constitution, it has allowed us to find a way to overcome some of the maladies that we have been inflicted with. Let me say it like this. In another country, a tussle would never have stopped. It would have continued in a vicious cycle and over, and it would have been hard without total physical fight to be able to have changed anything. So there are some benefits of our government. I'm gonna let you answer. Go ahead, Brother Sedrick.
I'm not gonna debate with you on that. That's, my thing is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I won't debate and say this country's better than that and all this and all that. I'm saying that we have a responsibility to live out, what does it say? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? You mentioned the Constitution. We were 3/5 of a human being in terms of representation in that Constitution as well, right? And all of, whether we talk about the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, those things weren't just given to us because somebody felt good or they just felt like they wanted to be contritious or, altruistic. No, we have fought part and parcel every step of the way for every right that we have rightfully earned and deserved prior to, So I think it's important for us to make that distinction and understand that our collectivism and our activism and our engagement is what's really brought about, if any changes have happened in this society. And why do I say that? Because when you look at even 1964, 1965, many of the civil rights legislation that was done, that wasn't just done because LBJ felt good. That was on the blood and the backs of many Blacks who had rioted after Dr. Martin Luther King and others had been killed and assassinated, right? So when we look at 68, the Fair Housing Act and all of those kind of things that had been put in place, that was because of bloodshed and activism that was done by many of our ancestors and elders. And I think it's important for us to say this right now, is that as we see a new Reconstruction rearing its ugly head, as we see new Andrew Johnsons, as we see new Jefferson Davises, as we see new individuals who are coming about to take back many of the progressive and the positive things that we've seen happen over the last 30, 40 years, if you will. We must then begin to question those who are coming before us, presenting information or, talking about different talking points, telling us things have improved or telling us things have gotten worse without giving us evidence, and then also giving us an agenda at which we can fall into and fall in line with. I'll say this and I'll close, because I think it's important to say this mayoral race, most people have no idea what's going on. Most people have no understanding about what's going to happen November 7th. But there are some critical things in place. John Whitmire, who, according to the last poll that was done by U of H, got 34%. Shelia Jackson Lee got about 32%. What he knows and understands is he's going to focus so much of this federal funding that's coming from the last few COVID dollars, and then the state having COVID dollars as well. That funding could be used for more police and more legislation and policy, if you will, for policing. Shelia Jackson Lee is focusing in on trying to curb this exorbitant and insane property, and the fact that most folk in Houston cannot afford to own a home anymore. Most of us live out in the burbs now because we can't afford to live in the city. So that's one of the things that she's focusing in on. Now, do we have to hold her feet and his feet to the fire? Absolutely. I think that what we as African Americans must do is begin to focus on education. We have to focus in on, not only receiving opportunities of economics and job development, which is a critical thing for Black people. And according to surveys, that's one of the focal points of Black folks, but also police and civic engagement in the community. I'll say the last little thing, and I think this is important. Black communities need a TERS. Black communities need an opportunity to get tax rebates. They need an opportunity to get resources to open up businesses and to generate economic oases, if you will, so that we can be competitive in this 21st century economy.
I want to say this. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity. It's always comes back to the perception that is out there that our young people see and how they feel about themselves, which in a lot of ways is controlled by the media machine. Our kids are into the internet, and what they may not even turn on a news program, but they know all about the internet and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all the other things. And the media understands that and understands what they're feeding to them. And they've always understood that. We have to become better promoters, providers, and information generators of the areas where our young people and our people, period, are gathering their thoughts and information. And from that, then we can generate different ideas for business, different ideas for collaboration. And one of the things that I try to do is keep connections, keep talking to people. I keep my openings. I do not try to, because somebody disagrees with me, has a different standpoint, I'm not going to cut them off unless I'm forced to cut them off, because you got to keep connectivity. You got to keep ideals open and be able to generate different ways of informing and being informed. That is very important. And that is a battle that we have always had and is very critical today. Pam, did you want to say something?
Well, one of the main things that they were talking about government and how, the government, and one thing that we always fail to remember, the government has created, I'm willing to get rid of the welfare system. It doesn't benefit me, but honestly, you have to think about other people. I'm willing to get rid of the tax system. It doesn't benefit me. I've been paying for the last 20 years, me and my husband. So Social Security is not going to benefit me. I was in two pensions, an HPD pension, which I'm currently getting, and I'm a school district employee, a teacher. So, so they never talk about the big, even the disaster relief. All of a sudden, Republicans want to take care. I hate to say Republicans, like I'm for right. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm for what's right, the right thing to do. But it's always these disaster reliefs. All of a sudden, we need aid until, we don't need you government interfering until we need aid. Until this, fine. I don't benefit from it. I don't have children in school. Why am I paying school district taxes? But that's how the system works, and we have to work within it. So I hate when we divide and saying what this is. I'm surprised with you. You gave me the information about Shelia Jackson Lee, because Hispanics stick together. We know they stick together. I'm surprised that John Whitmire is the leading her by 2 points. I didn't know. Thank you for informing us.
Well, because it's still early, and let's be real, this election is going to be won based on money. Dan Patrick has already said that he's going to win, because they're putting so much money behind him. And I think this is important to say.
What is Dan Patrick running for?
Dan Patrick is
I know he's the lieutenant governor. Is that what he's running for?
No.
What is he running for?
He's a lieutenant governor, but which is the most powerful person in the state of Texas. Many people don't know that. They think the governor is, but the lieutenant governor, based on Texas politics, has probably as much power as anybody in the country, or definitely the state, the Republic of Texas. I'm not trying to evade your question, but I do want to make sure that we focus in on the fact that Shelia Jackson Lee is as invested in politics from a federal level as anybody ever. She's had that office since '89, since Craig Washington and Mickey Leland, okay? And then you got John Whitmore, who's probably been in the Senate almost as long as anybody since 1982. So right. I'm not trying to say that any of these individuals are the answer. Is
Whitmire kin to Catherine Whitmire?
Huh?
Is he kin to Catherine Whitmire, former mayor?
I don't know that,
yes.
But I do know that. But that he is very wealthy, and he has been a part of Texas politics for a very long time. He sits on the commission for criminal justice, and he is well invested in not only criminal justice, but the police. They've already supported him across the state, and it'll be very interesting to see who can raise more money. Now, I'll bring this up because I think this is important to think about. Both of them potentially will have to run not only for mayor, but for their own offices again. And based on the way Texas politics is, they have to decide when the runoff will be, because it'll more than likely be a runoff. Right, you got to get 50%. I don't think either one of these candidates will get 50%. So if the runoff is on December 9th, that'll be prior to the filing for both of them to run for their respective offices that they hold now. If it's the 16th, it'll be after that. So it'll be very interesting to see what they'll do in terms of whether they'll run. We know Amanda Edwards is running for Shelia Jackson Lee's congressional seat. And there's a couple of young ladies who run before who have a more progressive tint who are running for Whitmire's seat. So it'll be interesting to see what that happens. I know there'll be a lot of money thrown into this election. And you always remember this in capitalism, follow the money. Follow the money. So if there's a lot of money in this race, that means there's a lot of power associated to the mayoralty position.
I just wanted to mention this. Dr. Letitia Plummer was on the Sourceseeker Hour. For those of you who don't know, she's the at-large congressperson. And she mentioned that Houston has our largest population is over 40% Hispanic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Is there going to be a Hispanic candidate that is going to get in that runoff, or are they going to dilute each other? And you mentioned Shelia Jackson Lee, 32%, and she's the progressive Black candidate. But Whitmire is also, he's a brother of Catherine Whitmire, who had a progressive kind of slant. So again, where's that direction going to go? What do we see happening? What do you think is going to happen, Brother Warren?
Again, you can look at Tony Busby and Sylvester Turner for the answer for that. You know, it was really about whose outreach, whose campaign was most effective, most efficient at messaging for the Hispanic community. Now, I think, and I know I've heard people say they stick together, but we have to understand that there are whites who are considered Hispanic, and then whites who are non-Hispanic in this society, okay? So that's important to understand because when we look at the demographic, yes, whites make up 40%, okay? African-Americans make up some 22 to 26% in the city. And then, you know, you have Hispanic non-whites
make up
as well.
37%, Hispanic, yeah. 37.
But I'm just saying that's important to acknowledge, you know, the fact that whites and Hispanics are still considered to be correlated. But I think it's important to say this, and I'll close. Whoever's outreach is the strongest in terms of the issues that are affecting Hispanics. A lot of people think it's immigration. No, it really is about family values and then economic opportunities. So whoever is able to address the bread and butter issues, those kitchen table topics, will be your new mayor.
Can I say something
Warren,
about the white
go ahead, Pam. I'm gonna come back to Brother Warren.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to say something why Hispanics are classified as white. In 1960, I believe, it was before, it may have been, God, I used to know that. It's 1960 or 1950. Hispanics, they were Hispanics, Mexicans, but they did not want, so they had to pick a ethnicity. I mean, are you Black or are you white? You know, you can't be Hispanic and you can't be from Mexican. So the Hispanic fought, said, well, we're not Black. And this went up to the Supreme Court. And they said, well, you're not white. So they said that they, Hispanic fought not to be called Black. So basically you notice that their ethnicity is, they're Hispanic, but they're under the white category.
Okay.
Because they did not want to be classified as being Black either. You know why? I wouldn't either. I mean, if I was reading, but well, you know what I meant by that.
Yes, I know. And we all know what you mean by that. You know,
it's harder.
The cast of dispersions against Black people all throughout our existence. Why would somebody seek that unless it's a part of your soul?
Right.
Warren.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes. Where is Black America, Black Houston? We are at the end of our show, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to say their final words and so forth. I want to start with you, Brother Warren. Where is Black America going? Black Houston going? Where should we go? And how can we do better? I agree with Brother Sedrick. Education is the main thing, but it's harder and harder in this internet age to really get a grasp of it. It's not impossible though, but it's harder and harder, as well as how the media tries to give you 4-second bites so you can grab on and catch a hold. Brother Warren.
What I would like to say to the listening audience, my best advice is for each person to find out who they are personally, because we can get into the politics of this stuff all day long and it'll be back and forth, and there'll never be an end to it. I hear people talking, like I hear Brother Sedrick and others talking about the schools. We can talk about different things. Now, as I recall, before all this stuff transpired, that a lot of times we had negativity to say about public schools. We had negativity. It wasn't worth nothing. It was a waste of our time. To give you the history on that, And the problem where definitely lies in our community is when we allow other people to teach and train our children. Public schools only became necessary after slavery. You go back and look into the history of how the whole public school thing, there were no public schools in America. If you didn't, just like they have in Africa and certain countries, if your parents or your family didn't have any money, you didn't get educated. There's no law in the books that says the government has to educate your child. Your child is your responsibility, not the government. So now if I give you something and you mistreat it and I take it back, well then whose fault is that? So now we're complaining that the education, the public education is being snatched away. We had a problem when it was free. Now we're complaining about it when it's being snatched away. There's always going to be politics. There's always going to be a negative and a positive side to everything. We can talk about the federal government. We can talk about the negativity of it. We can talk about the positivity of it. But I say to each and every one, find out who you are, find out your place in this world, because you're not going to change things from the point of making everything all right. It's not going to happen. So that's my comment, and thank you for having me tonight.
Yes, sir. I agree with that totally. It is, but it's an overwhelming thing, and those that are able to manage the media, and that's always been those who can control the information in the books, those that can control who would appear on TV, because that has such an impact upon what you see and what goes in your mind. Back during slavery time, they said, okay, slaves, you cannot congregate together and discuss the Bible without the master there. There was a reason for that. You can't read. We don't want you to read. We don't want you to be educated. So it all goes back to that. And whoever can control the information or the way knowledge is given to others and how you receive it, that is where the power is. That is where the power is. Thank you, Brother Warren. I'll come back to another statement, a last statement. Brother Sedrick.
As the caucus, the Black Congressional Caucus said, we are under attack, but we are not victims and we are not powerless. I think that that's a beautiful statement to typify the fact that, yes, there are some forces against us that are presenting a maximum level of resistance. But we have the history, and that's why we have to be educated upon it properly to know that we shall overcome, as our elders would say. But we need to find new ways to begin to rejuvenate our understanding and our thinking. It says, for lack of knowledge, people shall perish. So we need to make sure that we're supporting shows like yours and others that are giving us the critical information that we need to know so that we're more aware. I'll share this because I think it's important to say, and if student loans are getting ready to start. And, folk been running around, for the last 3 years avoiding it. But you're going to see folk, endure a tremendous amount of economic deprivation unless we can get the kind of legislation that can put that $10,000 back on the table, potentially $20,000, or to remove some of these student loans, because African Americans as a block have the largest student debt in this country as far as per capita and percentage. And I'll say this in close. I think it's important that we begin to revisit the Black agenda that was talked about in the early 2000s by Farrakhan, by Jesse Jackson, by Brother Cornel West, who's running for president right now, because what we need to do is to make sure that we have our vested interests at heart and that we're holding those who say they have our vested interests at heart accountable.
Would you like to share the name of your program, how people can contact you also, Brother Sedrick?
Well, you can look on Facebook at Conscious Mindset, and you can send me a message on Facebook, or you can contact 832-208-2312. We'll be doing some back to school drives as well as getting people aware of how important it is to make the right choice for mayor, because the mayor has to begin to attack and tackle what's happening with the disenfranchisement of not only our city, not only our school board, but our county.
Brother Warren, are you still there? Would you like to give a message to the people, how they can contact you?
I think Brother Warren is gone.
Okay.
Okay, it's mine, because I know why he's gone, because I looked up when the public school system started. I asked him that. It started, it was the first started in Massachusetts in 1852. So slavery ended in 1865. And it was officially mandatory in 1918, but the first public school system. So what he said, that slavery was the reason for the public, that was not true. Now, let's go back to the Cornel West. Situation. First of all, he was very harsh when Barack Obama was president. I mean, I'm okay with it being harsh with Barack Obama, but why didn't he have that same energy when Trump? I mean, he had nothing to say. It's like, kick the brother, but leave the white guy alone. And so I don't particularly trust anything that comes out of his mouth. So I'm, with that Cornel West situation, I think that's something to be. You should look at. I mean, that's something you should look at. All Black Americans. I don't think he's on our team, but that's my opinion.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to share how anybody can get in touch with you?
You know what? I appreciate you inviting me on here, but I'm just there to support her and present my information and facts. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. This is the 137th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. I am Baruti Carl Alexander. These platforms are very important to inform, to be informed, to get a message out, as well as let people express themselves. It's very important. It's very good. More of our people need to do this, and we need to collaborate and not cut each other off. We need to keep open lines of communication and keep it going, keep doing it, and keep pushing forward. I'm Baruti Carl Alexander, 137th episode. I thank you. We will see you next time. Our next episode will be coming from Las Vegas. We're going to try to do it live from Las Vegas. And we're going to be with Brother Mo McCoy, Fireproof Films. We do a lot of diverse episodes on the show, and we thank you. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.